This is Ambition Today. Today we are joined by Adam Tishman. He is the co-founder at Helix Sleep, a direct-to-consumer sleep brand aiming to change the way people sleep. This is Ambition Today.
These are the entrepreneurs, creators, investors, and builders who ambitiously change to the world. Explore the hardships and heroisms of everyday life while we reveal the key moments to leave behind a lasting legacy. This is Ambition Today with Kevin Siskar.
What's up, world? I am Kevin Siskar, and you are listening to Ambition Today. Make sure you subscribe to our website, siskar.co, to get all the latest episodes, or any podcast app, Breaker, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can catch Ambition Today. Listeners can now also join the back channel, which we are calling the Ambition Today A-List. You get exclusive clips from all of our guests and an exclusive piece of content, such as the single greatest piece of advice each guest has ever learned. Last episode, we talked to Alan Sakian. He's the founder of Simulation, which is helping us better understand who we truly are and where we're going in the universe. But today, we are joined by Adam Tishman. He's the co-founder at Helix Sleep, a direct-to-consumer sleep brand aiming to change the way people sleep. Adam, welcome to Ambition Today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me here. This office is awesome. We're sitting here overlooking Madison Square Park. Amazing.
Of course, yeah, no, it's a great view. We love being here.
Well, I'm happy to report that I'm well rested. Actually, on the recommendation of our mutual friend, Andrew Levine, I actually bought a Helix mattress last month. But we can talk more about that later in the show. For now, let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little about where you grew up.
Yeah, so I grew up here in Manhattan.
Awesome. What was growing up in New York like?
It was normal. You know, I think people always ask me what it was like with dreams of, Gossip Girl and all those shows, but it was a normal experience. I went to a high school that was just outside the city, so definitely, felt like a normal kid growing up. I guess I just was taking cabs in the subway earlier than most people.
That's great. Well, I love to hear that. Very cool. We've had a few other guests. Dale Resi was famously from New York, but in the 80s, like a really, really bad time. Great. So, you went to Princeton for your BA. Was there any parts of growing up in New York that you feel stuck with you today or have made you entrepreneurial or influenced you to kind of become who you are?
Yeah, I mean, I think growing up in New York is, one of the advantages is you're just surrounded by a ton of activity, even as a young kid. Access to museums, to parks, to, stores that other people just don't have access to. And so I definitely feel like that was something that brought on a certain level of independence. I think growing up in the city, even just transit, right? Like even the ability, you don't have to drive everywhere. You're not beholden to your parents. And so you sort of grow this internal ability to just want to be independent and do your own thing.
How old were you when your parents first let you just walk out the front door and have the whole city to yourself?
Yeah, I think it comes in phases. I think there's walking around your block and not crossing a street is, that happens maybe around 10, 11. And then, when you're 13, 14, then you're starting to cross streets, go to movies by yourself. And then, everything's off at around 14, 15.
Kind of similar. I grew up in the suburbs. So yeah, it was like you weren't allowed to cross the street. But once you got a car, it was game over. So I imagine once you guys got your Metro cards, it was like no sleep till Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the one funny thing, though, is that, a lot of my friends growing up just never really got licenses because it wasn't even worth it. And so you have this whole, swarm of mid-20 people who came back from college and are taking, driver's ed at that point.
Yeah, for sure. So then you leave the city, you go to Princeton, you got a BA in history. We've had a few other guests on the show that got history degrees, and I find it interesting because I feel like those people in particular have a really good insight into what the hell is happening in the world now and how shit repeats itself. How has that been helpful to you? Why history?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I majored in medieval and Renaissance European history, not exactly like the normal track for someone that wanted to do something entrepreneurial, but I think the lessons and maybe the skill set that you learn in history is really how to analyze something, and whether it's a problem, whether it's a historical event, and really pull out and tease the core thesis of what happened, why it happened, and understanding sort of like the conditions around what happened essentially. And so, it really helps a lot with some of the softer skills and some of the skills around understanding and organizing thoughts in a really cohesive and straightforward way.
That's great. Super interesting to see like how it always comes together. Do you have any medieval? Is anything repeating itself right now aside from populism and?
Yeah, I think that maybe not exactly from the medieval ages, but I think that what you're seeing is it's history is cyclical, and it's just because people respond to incentives the same throughout history, and so you have ups, you have downs. A lot of it's tied to the economy, and I definitely think that's what we're seeing now, in our political atmosphere, and it's just sort of the way it goes. Yeah,
we got a little bit of New York coming into the background of the show here, but no, it's interesting. I really like what you said about incentives, right? Because my degree is in neuroscience, and at the end of the day, like humans evolve, but over millions of years, right? And so we really haven't changed much. And so if you can understand those incentive structures, it actually is kind of entrepreneurial in the long run, because that's what matters to build a company, really.
Absolutely. I think that understanding incentives, understanding people, what makes people tick, what people really want and why they want it is core to what we do, especially in like the direct-to-consumer space, right? At the end of the day, if your consumer is a person, then you have to understand sort of how people behave.
Yeah, exactly. So quickly walk us through your time from, Barclays on through Pure Brands, these pre-Helix days to, what was that journey like?
Absolutely, yeah. So, I graduated college in 2009, which wasn't exactly the best time in the United States.
Yeah. And then you went to a bank.
And then I went to an investment bank. Actually interned at Lehman Brothers the summer before, and then they went under in the interim, and then Barclay came in.
You're a second guest that was at Lehman during the break.
That's funny. Yeah, I wonder if that really was.
And then went and started a company.
Yeah, exactly. So went to Barclays, worked in investment banking in the technology group. Pretty quickly realized that it wasn't where I wanted to be and what I wanted to be doing. I found that analyzing other people's companies and from a financial perspective wasn't really interesting to me. I was more interested in like the way that these companies were operating. And I pretty quickly turned and went on to a brand incubator here in New York, a company called 100 Mile Group. Essentially, they teamed up with emerging, mostly consumer brands, a lot in the health food space, helping companies grow out. So, everything from traditional agency services like marketing, business development, creative, to actually generating brands internally. My role there was in sort of strategy, business development, and marketing. And then one of the companies that we started internally was a company called Sheets Brand, which was essentially a dissolvable energy strip. So imagine a cup of coffee mixed with a cup of coffee mixed with like a Listerine strip, essentially. Okay. Pretty unique product, definitely a different product. It was a wild ride being there because we had a host of pretty crazy influential endorsers, people like LeBron James and Serena Williams and Pitbull and Amari Stoudemire and a lot of other NBA players. And it was mostly sold at store. So it wasn't such a direct to consumer online experience. It was more, how do we get into stores? How do we get on store shelves? And we ended up being in about 40,000 stores across the country. I ran a sampling program of somewhere over like 7 million sheets sampled throughout college campuses across the US with like maybe hundreds of ambassadors at the time. It was a really, really interesting experience. I think for myself, it was a big growing experience, but it was something where, ultimately I thought the growth curve was stalling and I really wanted to take a step forward and ended up going to business school after that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you went and got back to school, got your MBA. What was that experience like? Because I feel like MBAs are sometimes a little bit bizarre for founders, right? Because some founders, I find that they get an MBA and like they crush it because of it, and then other founders like get really entitled and kind of weird with their MBA. So like, what was your MBA experience like? Unpack that and how has that helped you with Helix?
No, absolutely. So I think that's a fair point. I think, by the way, that's MBAs are like that for everyone in all professions. I went to school with sort of the core goal of starting a business and launching a company. Yeah. And given my background, as a history major and then working sort of on the brand and marketing side, I thought there were core areas to my skill set that I could really improve, like understand things like financials better, accounting, statistics, some of the harder, more math-like skills. And so that was a really important piece for me. But I think what the MBA program really does also is it really puts you in contact with other like-minded and not so like-minded people, which is really where like the spark of ingenuity comes from, I guess. And so pretty quickly on during our period there, I was at a talk by Neil Blumenthal, one of the founders of Warby Parker, who's an alum of Wharton. And he when he comes, he gives a talk, and there's hundreds of people that listen to the crowd. And he did a small breakout session, and I was sitting in the room, and there was another guy, and there was like sort of asking interesting questions around different D2C spaces. And we talked a little bit, and ended up meeting one of my co-founders in that small discussion, actually.
That's awesome. I definitely want to dig a little bit more into like the direct-to-consumer space a little bit later. So maybe we'll come back to that. So you have this aha moment. I love that like in every episode it feels like there's like this moment of like where greatness touches at some point. Like I guess a good example of this would be like Tesla was Edison's like intern, right? Yeah. And I always find that there's always someone that like influenced or like just had a touch point where it was like the inspiration, the spark just like transferred. So the spark transfers to you from this talk and your experiences up to that point with building brands, and you start Helix Sleep. So for those listening, what is Helix? How did that get started? You met your co-founder. What happened next?
Yeah, absolutely. So met one of the co-founders in pretty early on in our first year in business school. And we really identified a problem. And the problem was buying a mattress was fucking terrible. It was something that we had to do moving to a new city just a couple months earlier. It was something that was shared by pretty much everyone in school with us. And it was something that, if you did a very quick survey, Yelp review, just looked at the consumer industry, it was just a terrible experience. And what we kind of identified were there were three main issues in the mattress industry and buying a mattress. The first was products are really confusing. So when you go into a store, you don't really understand why one product costs $100 more than another. Should you buy the product that has the gel-infused foam versus the non-gel infused foam? How do you shop? And it's really hard because you don't do it often, right?
Yeah.
The second issue is that the prices are really inflated. So very, very expensive to buy a mattress at a retail store. Not uncommon to be spending upwards of $2,000-$3,000 for something that costs probably closer to $200 to $400 or $500 to make. So the margins are really inflated. And the third issue, which is the weirdest of all the issues, is just the way that the store is set up from a consumer experience. And so, with the salesman there, it's just really dirty inside. It feels sleazy. It's sort of, it's weird because it's like the last area in Western civilization, we're supposed to negotiate with the salesman. It'd be like walking into like J. Crew and negotiating the price of a shirt or something like that.
Hey, why are mattresses like car dealerships?
It doesn't really make sense. And they're not used. They're not. They're new. There should be price tags. And what we also learned, this wasn't so obvious to start, but what we learned later was a lot of the traditional brands were actually, incentivizing more of this type of behavior by giving the same type of mattress to different mattress stores and brands under different brand names. So essentially comparison shopping is almost impossible in the mattress industry. So you can't do what everyone does now,
which is literally the same mattress. You're just paying for the brand name tag attached to it.
Yeah, or even different, or even more is it's the same mattress, and at one store it's the mattress X52, and at the other store it's mattress ABD or whatever it is. And so they're just essentially putting a new skin on the mattress and rebranding it. And then each store is pricing that mattress based off of, the consumer in their area.
It's super interesting because I told you a little bit before the show, but you basically just described my experience, right? So like I bought the mattress in back in the day, and there's this warehouse on the Transit Road, the main strip in Buffalo, and it's this weird old guy who has the cheap local commercials between the shows that you see, and it's like really cheaply produced. It's just called Extreme Discount Mattress Warehouse. And like weird thing. It's like you go in there, it's a little bit dirty, but the prices are really good, but you got to negotiate, and it was weird. Yeah, I like my Helix better.
No, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, cool. Well, we're gonna take a quick break, and we're gonna come back, talk a little bit more about Helix. We'll be right back after the break.
This is Ambition Today.
If you're enjoying this episode with Adam, then please leave us a review in the iTunes store. If you don't know how to do that, you can just visit sysguard.co/review, and I will show you how to do that in 3 easy steps. For this episode, Ambition Today is happy to partner with Rivly. If you're ready to boost your productivity, then you need to check out Rivly.com. They're home to the best virtual assistants I have ever found, and if you visit Rivly.com/Skillshare today, you can get a discounted rate right now. And WeWork, a co-working space that lets you do what you love. I've said it 1,000 times on this podcast. They have offices in over 140 locations worldwide, and many of our portfolio founders here in New York use WeWork for their early stage office space. Adam, you guys actually started in a WeWork?
We did right out of business school. Our first office space was in a WeWork.
Nice. And how many people did you have in there?
To start, it was 4. We actually had we got 2 offices, one where we worked out of, and one which we remodeled into a mattress showroom.
Awesome. Love it. You can visit sysguard.co/WeWork to learn more today. And now back to this episode of Ambition Today.
Visit Ambition Today online at sysguard.co and follow the show on social media at Ambition Today.
Welcome back. We are here with Adam Tishman, and we're talking about his company, Helix Sleep, right before the break. So Adam, you guys start Helix. Where is it today? How has it grown? Take us to 2018.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we launched Helix in August of 2015, which is just a few months after we graduated.
Not that long ago.
No, definitely not. A little over 2.5 years ago. From a company perspective, we raised a little bit of seed round capital before we launched the business, and then ended up raising a Series A round of a little over $7 million in August of 2016, about a little over a year later. Today, we're super excited about where we are. Our core message of providing individually customized mattresses for consumers and other sleep products has really been resonating with consumers. I think that people have difficulty in this category, both at retail and even with online with a lot of our competitors, because it doesn't really make sense why one mattress would essentially work for everyone. And so people are really understand that there are different needs and preferences, which has been really awesome. From a business perspective, we're here in New York. We're a team of a little under 30 people across all the sort of normal, areas of the business. And so I'm really excited about that. We've sold, tens of thousands of mattresses at this point. A big deal for us is actually growing from a pure play mattress brand to what the original thesis and goal always was to be a more integrated sleep brand. And so, since launching mattresses, we've since launched pillows, sheets, box springs, mattress protectors, bed frames, and adjustable bases just recently.
Nice. That's awesome. One thing I want to touch on in there that you highlighted. So you guys fundraised. This is just a question I get all the time because I see a lot of early stage founders. You just said that you guys fundraised your seed pre-product. Quick data on that, right? So like in 2010, 10% of companies had a product before they raised their seed round. Now it's almost 60 to 70%, and that's in the Valley. It's probably even higher here in New York. What advice would you have to founders who are looking to fundraise early, but maybe haven't put a product in market yet?
Yeah, we get asked this question a lot also, and I think it's really nuanced. I think it depends a lot on the type of business and the type of product you're building, of course, right? Or if you're building something that's more tech-driven, something that's more physical product-driven, there are just needs from a capital perspective. Ultimately, I think, I'm not someone that thinks one path is 100% the right way to go. I do think, though, there's a couple things to think about when you're making this decision. And the first is really, what are your capital needs, right? To actually start and give this a real shot. The second is really, do you feel like it's easier to raise capital before you launch or after? In a lot of cases, it can be easier earlier because essentially when you're raising capital before you've launched a business, you're raising off of a deck and the team and sort of like the vision, versus after you've launched, you need to show data that something actually happened and it's working. Yeah. Which, sounds a little crazy, obviously, but it's something to think through.
No, it's super true. One of our mentors, Howard Love, published a book called The J-Curve, and he talks about how it's not actually a hockey stick. There's actually a little hook before it where you can actually it's easier to fundraise on an idea with some earlier investors, but the moment you hit the market, then you got to start proving yourself, and it dips before you can kind of fundraise again. Exactly.
No, 100%. And I think, again, it matters what industry you're in. Are you trying to get subscribers and users? So is it just like a linear curve in terms of growing that piece of the business? Is it revenue driven? Is it, do you have to show things around your customer acquisition costs? Yeah. There's just a lot of pieces to that.
Very cool. So you have an amazing system to get a new mattress. I'll give everyone a little background on how I got mine. So I took an online test. My wife took an online test. You can split the mattress, right?
Yep.
It gets customized to your own needs, behaviors. And then we're in New York City. So we came to your showroom and you guys book a hour slot for people to come in, lay down, take a nap, and try their customized mattress, which is amazing. And I think for some people maybe don't know what I'm saying when I say a customized mattress. So, how did you come up with this user experience for this product? How important has that been in just clearly defining and differentiating yourselves?
Yeah, I think it's core to what we do. I think we call it quiz commerce. And we've seen it actually grow quite substantially, since we've launched the business. But I think ultimately the goal, when you take a step back and you look at, why do salesmen in a store exist? Like theoretically, right? They're there to help you. And so, functionally, while the salesman in a traditional mattress store might not be doing the job that they're supposed to be doing, like the sort of like platonic reason for them being there was there's a purpose for them being there. And the way that we look at the quiz is essentially a way to help guide you to express and translate some of the things that you know about yourself into an optimized mattress. So when you take our mattress quiz or our sleep quiz, we ask you questions that you know. So things like your body types, your height and your weight, your sleeping preferences. Do you tend to sleep on your back or your side or your stomach? Do you get hot when you sleep or cold? Do you like a mattress that's a little bit firmer or softer? And then based on those answers, we can essentially translate that information into an optimized mattress. And what we're doing on our end is, if you think of a mattress like a layer cake, we're essentially playing around with the thickness of the layers, the density of the layers, the material in each layer, and the order of those layers to find the best feel, support, temperature, regulation, all that kind of stuff for you.
Yeah, it's interesting because in some ways you're doing something that's better. But to your point earlier about how messed up the industry is, it almost doesn't always feel that way up front. Because I remember taking the test, I was like, is this just more malarkey is, I guess, the word for like whatever everyone else shovels at Extreme Discount Mattress Warehouse, right? But now that I've slept on the thing 30 days and you guys have some warranty, right? Or you can try it out. It's accurate, right? Like I used to get so hot in the middle of the night. And so I optimized this mattress because I sleep hot and I haven't been hot once. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think, there was a lot of science that went into the background of this. It's a funny story actually. So me and the two other co-founders, none of us have mattress background experience. So,
not sure what that would be, but
yeah, exactly. We get asked this all the time. We always get asked, do you have experience in this industry? The answer was no.
Tell us about your family's mattress.
The second is why, why did you decide to go into mattresses? And the answer is no, there wasn't some, mattress that wronged me when I was, 15. Yeah. And so, what we did was we essentially started to research the industry pretty in depth, trying to understand both the product, the buying experience. And, we knew that there was that by bringing this new experience to people, we really could provide a lot of value, but we weren't exactly experts at the mattress piece of it. And so we ended up finding what was sort of the premier dissertation on sleep ergonomics, which is the study of a body when it's laying down in lying down position. You hear about ergonomics a lot with office chairs and stuff like that. We actually found this dissertation. It was written by a group of PhD researchers in Europe. They left their email at the bottom of the paper. We emailed him. We ended up having a Skype call later that week. And then about 2 weeks later, we flew out to Europe and met with him. And he ended up helping us develop the core technology that drives our algorithm.
I love it. Every founder's story is just so practical and simple. It's literally just doing the work to chase down this stuff that already exists in the world and just tying it down and just pulling it together. I love it. So, so two questions. First, quick rapid fire one. Why the name Helix?
Yeah. So we found naming the company incredibly difficult. We went through probably 2,000 names. We settled on Helix for a couple of reasons. So Helix is if you think about Helix, it's helical is the shape of a coil, which is in a mattress.
Yeah, I think like DNA.
Exactly. And then a double helix is your DNA. So we talk a lot about your sleep DNA. So that's the main reason.
Very cool. And then, why mattresses, right? So we started this podcast, you talked about meeting Neil from Warby Parker and direct to consumer. Mattresses are huge objects to ship in the mail, right? Unlike razor blades, I think everyone's probably familiar with Dollar Shave Club and that viral video. So how did sleep become such a massive direct-to-consumer industry? Yeah,
I think there's a couple reasons why mattresses are really interesting for direct-to-consumer. I think the first, at a macro level, sleep is sort of more elevated and important than it's probably ever been.
Yeah.
People really think about sleep the way they think about diet and exercise now, is living a healthy lifestyle. And that didn't used to be the case. People used to brag about, I only got 3 hours of sleep last night and I'm still able to do this. And now it's all about sleep. You hear professional athletes are talking about their sleep. It's just a big part of culture. And what that means is people are willing to invest both time and money into getting a better night's sleep.
Yeah.
More specifically with mattresses, I think what really opened the door was just very low e-commerce penetration. So we looked at it as a business model, right? There was low e-commerce penetration, really high concentration from a manufacturing standpoint, and really high prices at retail. So it lent itself to more of the D2C model. There's also some innovation on the product side around how to ship product for cheaper, some innovation around how to put the materials together that really opened the door a lot also.
Nice. So keeping on going on that list, so Andy Dunn, the founder of Bonobos, he coined this term V-commerce, right, which is short for a digitally native vertical brand. So where do you see, it feels like the floodgates are open for razor blades, mattresses, D2C, and honestly that being the future of retail to some extent, right? So where do you see the future of companies like this going into 2030 and beyond?
Yeah, so I have a specific view on this. I think that what you're going to see is, there's a lot of companies that are entering the traditional digitally native e-commerce space across industries. Everything, as you said, from razors to mattresses to furniture to luggage to whatever it might be. And these brands really resonate with consumers who shop fundamentally differently than they used to, right? People are going online, they're comparing product in a digital environment. They're looking at Amazon, of course. Overstock, they're looking at these brands, and the way that these brands add value is the brand piece of it, is really resonating with consumers. And so what I think you're going to start seeing is, as the traditional brick and mortar large players, so this is your Walmarts, your Targets, your Macy's, all these players in the world, start to fade out, I think you're going to start to see them come in and start to want to turn into owners of these brands essentially, and essentially swapping out their core competency as wholesalers to being sort of a core distribution center for owned and operated brands. Because ultimately the issue for them, it's just a margin issue.
Yeah.
And they have a tough time resonating. And it goes back to what maybe the V-commerce that Andy Dunn was saying, which is essentially the more vertical you can be, the more margin you capture essentially. And so I think you're going to see a lot happen in that space. I think it's very difficult for digitally native brands to stay exclusively digital forever. It just gets crowded, customer acquisition costs get difficult. And so that's one of the reasons why the more mature companies out there that are a little bit further along, Bonobos, Warby Parker, even Harry's to a certain extent, have opened either owned and operated physical retail stores, or have partnered with larger brands, right? I mean, look at Bonobos, right? Bonobos is now Walmart. Target is with Casper and Harry's. It's really starting to happen.
Yeah.
We're sticking a toe into the water now, just as an industry, but I think that's where it's going to go.
It's super interesting. It feels like we're pre 1920s, 30s, not 30s, 1920s, Gilded Age, right? So the era of digital monopolies is right around the corner, and we're going to see how all that plays out in the next few years.
Definitely. And what's driving that is Amazon. Amazon is obviously a huge driver in the motion that's happening.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, we are going to transition to the Ambition Day question of the day. Anything else the audience should know about Helix before we do so?
No, I think that's it. I think, we're just, I think ultimately what defines us is just a different viewpoint. And, I would encourage everyone that's listening as you build your business, it's not just product at the end of the day. It's also like the vision that you have and the story that you tell.
Yeah. Where are you guys going in the next few years? What's the future of Helix?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely have a lot of product expansion. That's really interesting to us. I think distribution expansion is also, as I mentioned. So really, direct. A lot of times people think about direct to consumer and they say, oh, online. But that's not really it. Direct to consumer can happen over many different channels, whether it be phone, whether it be physical retail. And I would say those are sort of the two big focal areas for us.
Awesome. Cool. Well, it is time for the Ambition Today question of the day. If you have a question that you want heard on future episodes, go to our website, syscar.co, to submit your question. So this is a sleep-related question, and you sort of touched on it a little bit, right? But as an entrepreneur, how important is sleep to you, right? Because many times as founders, we can find ourselves working on email or whatever at 2, 3 in the morning, and to your point, like we didn't get enough sleep. So mattress aside, what life tricks and tips do you have to ensure that like you personally stay in the right zone to run a company?
No, absolutely. I think sleep is super important to not just entrepreneurs, but obviously to everyone. I think it's probably the number one indicator for your performance the next day versus anything else that you can do. And so, the advice I would give people outside of, obviously having a good mattress and sheets and all the stuff that's comfy around you is to treat sleep as sacred and really practice what's called good sleep hygiene. And so, this is not revolutionary, but it really matters. So things like not being on your phone in bed. The other thing is treating your mattress, being in your mattress is like exclusively for sleep and sex. Like there really isn't other things you should be doing. You shouldn't be eating in bed. You should try to limit the amount of TV you watch in bed. Yeah. You definitely shouldn't be on your phone in bed, and just sort of treating that area very specifically for sleep. It actually triggers like response mechanisms in your brain. The other thing that you can do if you're a little bit more tech savvy is invest in things like blue light. You essentially want to limit blue light, and so you can get certain types of light bulbs. You can get you actually on your phone can put certain tints on your phone and stuff like that, night shift and all that kind of stuff. So I would say that those are really important. And then the last thing is you need to empty your brain before you go to bed. Or at least I do. So personally, I try to get done with email, get it all off my plate. And then, I keep a notepad by my bed and essentially will write down ideas that come to my head and before I go to bed, and then just sort of like try to go to bed on nothing. Is
there like a buffer period you give yourself between like watching TV or playing a video game or Netflix or something or email before going to sleep? Because I find sometimes if you try to just shut it off and then go to sleep, you're still just thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I would say for something like email, I would give it like a good 30, 45 minutes. Yeah. Basically for me, it's, if you're putting a lot of thought into it, it's more time. If you're lying in bed aimlessly watching like a rerun of The Office and it's sort of brainless, like a lot of people like to fall asleep like that, but you can just kind of turn it off and go right to bed.
Yeah, I know most people are listening and are probably like, what am I supposed to do for 45 minutes? And it's like, read a book.
Yeah, you can read a book. That's always helpful, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, cool. Thank you for coming on. If you want to hear Adam's single greatest piece of advice, join us on the back channel, syscar.co/A-list. The show notes with everything from this episode will be up on our website. And Adam, thank you for coming on. Where can people go find out more about you and Helix?
Blog? Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for having me. And you can definitely come find us at helixsleep.com or come visit us in our Manhattan showroom on 25th and Broadway.
Highly recommend it. Stay curious, everyone, and I will see you on the next episode of Ambition Today.
Thanks for listening to Ambition Today. Be sure to visit syscar.co to get all the information from this episode and more great content. Until next time, stay curious, everyone.